All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the Flare Forward, where we're going to be interviewing Danielle, who was part of the TED Talk. So, very, very awesome, unique opportunity there. And then, to be honest, a close friend of Whale. So, this ought to be very entertaining, I have a feeling. So, let's see where we go from here, guys.
Awesome. All right. So I know we're not going to talk only about crypto in this podcast, but this is how we start. So we want to get your origin story. How did you get into crypto, Daniel?
All right, Flare Forward team, thanks so much for having me today. I am not a techie or really into finance much, but in 2017, a dear friend reached out to me. His name's Rugi, and he asked if I had read the Bitcoin white paper. I had not. I'd heard of Bitcoin, of course. So he sent me over the white paper. I read it, and it tickled the part of me that has really been motivated by creating a more just world. Rugi and I had met doing community organizing work in Oakland in the late or the 2010. I think we connected. Rugi sent me that white paper because he was volunteering for a ICO. Again, I had no idea what an ICO was at the time. The ICO that we were working on, that he was recruiting me to, was for the Pillar Project. And the Pillar Project's vision was to create a personal data locker. So, a way for users of all these digital tools to own their data so we wouldn't continue to be pillaged by hackers and rapacious service providers. So Rugi and I were the marketing volunteers for the ICO. The ICO ended up doing really well, and then once the ICO period wrapped, so this is the initial coin offering for those who weren't involved in crypto, pre 2020. We raised, I think it was $21 million from 10,000 global investors over the period of like 60 hours. At the end of the ICO, the founder of the Pillar Project was like, all right, we're going to have a conference, an unconference in some hard ass geography to get to. It was Slovakia, Poprad, Slovakia. They had a unconference, and anyone who showed up got a chance of kind of getting hired on as the initial team. I went, I loved the folks that I met, the conversations we were in, the vision that they were pumping out. And so got hired on there. And it turns out I'm not a good employee. Quickly quit and continued to help other ICO projects out with their marketing effort. Rugi and I had kind of tapped into this guerrilla marketing using this thing called YouTube and influencers to get some good conversations going with project founders who we didn't have much access to back then. And then I've been involved in the space ever since, mostly on the kind of operations, networking, marketing side of things, not the technical, not the tokenomic side of things.
That's awesome. And then I know that you have some good friends that you have made from this space, no?
Absolutely. Some of the best friends that I have, I've met on the internet. And so, throughout the years, we've been talking, playing around, sending each other memes on, Twitter and Instagram. And then in 2020, when the world got pretty weird, we decided to meet up in person. And it has been such a rich source of community, of joy, of deepening these friendships to be in person, because the things that we love to do most aren't the crypto stuff, aren't things that we can do online. It's we like to dance, we like to meditate, we like to play in water, we like to do yoga. And so we were able to do all those things together in person. So we make it a point to meet up every year or so in some beautiful geography, just to do the things we like to be, not necessarily the things that we like to do, the worky professional crypto passion stuff, but just be with one another in the more creative, humane spaces.
That's amazing. I mean, one of the things that I appreciate about you, Daniel, is that you're a visionary and you're a dreamer. So if you had a little magic wand and you could choose a future, and how would crypto be involved in that 5 or 10 years ahead?
That's such a good question. The 5-10 year vision I have for crypto is it's similar to kind of how we interact with the internet. It's a lot of one click. What you see is what you get. It is not complicated. If I had a grandma, she could log on and use these tools without understanding the why and the complexity of it. There's no jargon, and these tools are being used far beyond just financial spaces. That our insurance companies, our healthcare companies are run on crypto rails. That makes it a hell of a lot safer, more efficient, more coordinated for us to get the services that we need from these service providers, but in a way that we're protected as the consumer. So we can stop being the products of, but the actual consumers of these important services that we need to live this modern life.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that would be a very wonderful future if we can get there. So you recently did a TED Talk. That's a big thing, man. Tell us a little bit how that dream started.
Thank you. Yeah. So I've been doing team and leadership development consulting for about 12 years. And throughout that time, I've tried all sorts of different ways to like market myself and stay on an edge. I'm a consultancy of one, a solopreneur, so I have to be kind of my own motivator and agent of focus. And it was 2 years ago that I was just feeling kind of lackluster. I didn't know what the next thing was and wanted to figure that out. So I did a 7-day fast. And at the end, it might have been day 6, not 7. But I had this dream of like, okay, the thing that has been the through line through all my work, whether it was in crypto or in the nonprofit space or in healthcare spaces, has been creating a sense of connection and belonging between the different stakeholders, the different members of the team, the different parts of the system. And so over the last 18 months post that dream, I've been scratching at how can I bring this theme of my life of belonging and lack thereof to a bigger stage. How can I serve higher and work less? That's kind of the tension that I'm trying to dance between. And the simplest solution in my mind was like, get on stages. A lot of my work is private, so I'm doing it for an organization. So we go on retreat somewhere and we don't talk about it. The organization's not talking about it explicitly to their external partners. And so by getting on a stage, it's enabled me to grow my audience, share what I really care about, instead of responding to a client need or just being limited my audience by who my clients are able to bring on the retreat, bring to the workshop. So yeah, the TED stage was one that I thought, okay, these are stages that you can apply to. And there's TED Talks going on, maybe not every day, but most days of most weeks and most geographies. There's some TEDx. These are the independently organized TED stages that are being hosted by different communities. And so I applied to almost 100 different stages and got accepted by 3, chose to move forward with 1 because it happened to be closest to where I grew up. And I wanted my mom and dad in the audience. And so, yeah, about a little over a month ago, I gave the TED Talk, and it's up on YouTube and racking up some views and likes and comments. And
That's incredible. That's incredible.
So what's the biggest challenge to get it going? Like what's some of the challenges that you had to overcome to be able to accomplish that dream?
Getting really clear on what I wanted my message to be. Like the TEDx tagline is yeah, ideas to share with the world, big ideas to share with the world. And it's like, okay, what is my big idea? What makes it novel? And what is a compelling way to share it that's immediately accessible, that is going to be timeless. So, when the next global crisis happens or the next set of words that we're not allowed to use gets taken off the table, how can this bit of content remain relevant? Because it's on the internet, it's going to live on for a long time. And then the final challenge was condensing my story and what I'm passionate about into something that is under 10 minutes. So I rehearsed so friggin' much. I finished drafting of like the initial script for the talk back in October, and it took me a solid 4 months of practicing and refining it to really get clear as to like what is the essence that I'm trying to get to, and how can I say it without any of the jargon, without any of the fluff, while remaining true to me, to my story, and what I think is essential for folks to walk away with. And so after kind of the nuts and bolts of scripting and presenting, I think the hardest part was reliving it. The stories that I tell in the TED Talks, some of them are some of the more painful moments of my life. And so every time I'm out there rehearsing, I'm reliving these moments because I want to feel into that emotion. Because if I'm feeling that emotion on stage, I'm able to transmute that emotion to the audience. So there'll be like that emotional connection between us. So I rehearse probably 3 times a day for 4 months straight, and every day having to like re-step into those gnarly, shadowy places was not fun. And it brought so much more clarity to me. It was extremely like therapeutic and cathartic as to what these stories in my life mean to me and how they've formed me into who and what I am now.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think that being able to shift an experience and then take the best of it, it's like a superpower. I really appreciated that scene in the train that you like everything seemed going south, and then you were like, no, actually, it's right where I want it to be. So that was a super fun tale that you shared.
That's not my imaginary thought the way I thought it was going to go down.
Right. One of those things, like sometimes when we're in our darkest places, the light is right there. And sometimes when I've been at my highest moments, like the darkness is just around the next bend. And I think it's just a good reminder to embrace what is and not get too attached. Enrique, you've recommended this book, Transurfing. It's like there's this line in there that he keeps repeating around reducing importance. And so whether we're in like those darkest moments or those lightest moments, just to like turn down the emotional volume, because who the hell knows what's going to happen next.
A great book on that I really love is called Peaks and Valleys.
Peaks and valleys. All
Yes.
right, I need that to Audible.
You might want to read it. You'll love it. It was written by the same guy who wrote Who Moved My Cheese, and it's like it's a short read, but the guy spent like 12 years putting that short read together. So it's kind of like your TED Talk, but don't, into a book. And it's all about understanding the peaks and valleys of life. Just an incredible book.
Thank you for this recommendation. Spencer Johnson, MD, Peaks and Valleys.
Yep.
Got it here. All right.
So, Daniel, I also know that you interviewed John McAfee. Like, please explain to me how that happened.
So yeah, God, it must have been in 2018, maybe 2019, when the legend was still around, and he was in a Faraday cage wanting to talk to folks. And I followed him on Twitter because he's ridiculous, and he was very much part of the ICO scene back in 2017. And one day I read a tweet from his account that was like, I'm happy to get on any podcast and talk to anyone about anything. I was like, okay, let's do this, John. So replied to the tweet and was like, I've got a podcast with about 10 listeners, maybe 400 downloads total after 40 episodes. I'd love to have you on to talk about, some of your motivations, not just like the technical stuff or the future casting, but like who you are. And so his wife did all of the scheduling. I think she might still run his Twitter account. And so we jumped on a Zoom call, much like we have today, and he was in a Faraday cage in some non-disclosable location. And we had like I don't know, maybe 35, 40-minute conversation. He bogarted the mic. He didn't answer many of my questions. He recited Shakespeare just off the dome, and Keats and some other poets. And it was freaking wild, but it all came from just me seeing him send out this tweet and me feeling like, all right, I'm going to call you on your offer that you'll be on anyone's podcast, like even little old me. So if you go to soundcloud.com/onward, that's my old podcasting page, and you could probably find the interview there.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, I mean, that's kind of how we started, Steven and me. We were like, hey, so why don't we make some X spaces? And then, like, next thing we do, like, we're doing this a big chunk of our days. And it was just like taking one step after another. In that book, Transurfing, that we were talking, that's what it says. Like, the most important part of anything is just to keep walking forward, no matter what's going on. So, you said something about, like, how do you dilute everything to the most basic of the information that you want to transfer. So I think that that's something that we've been like trying to understand, Stephen and me. It's like, how do we ask the right questions? How do we invite others to be heard? Like you said in your TED Talk, which I really like that quote. So it's been a very interesting journey, like getting to know and connect with people. I mean, Flair, one of the mottos is connect everything.
Right.
And it's been great to be able to connect with a lot of super interesting people and get to hear their origin stories and like what motivates them, and that's amazing.
And I think that this is such an important part of the blockchain cryptocurrency story that often gets ignored, which is like, we're building all these tools and pumping them out there to change the lives of individuals. And so the more that we can like hear the stories of individuals, whether it's the founders or the users or the devs, and hear their motivations, like that's what gets me going. And that's what I think a lot of us are in this space to see more of, like human potential realized at a scale before now unknown to us.
And some of those guys are just incredibly gifted to talk to. They just don't have a platform or an avenue or even a way to do it. So yeah, no, 100%. I think you nailed that, where it's just awesome to actually get to know some of these guys. And it kind of opens the eyes up of like, this guy's just like me. That's right. Incredible.
And what I so love about the approach that you all have taken is you've built a platform now, Flair Forward, to begin transferring the power that you've created by who you are and how you are in this network to elevate the voices of others so that they can tell their story, so that you're using your interest to share what is interesting about others. And by doing so, you're unlocking and better connecting the whole network within this ecosystem. And it's so beautiful and it's so important.
I've never heard it put that way. That's actually the exact way it is, but I've never heard it put that way. And it's an incredible experience, an incredible thing to be a part of, because to be that center point means you get to talk to everybody. You're not siloed. So it's just free. It's so crazy.
And y'all are going about it in a way that is just such a beautiful fractal of the crypto space. Like while you might be a hub of information, like all the tweets and how that you're presenting who you're interviewing, you're allowing people access to these people and showing them how they too can get in touch with them, whether it's, DM so-and-so, or here's more information about the protocol, here's how to use their tool. You've disintermediated yourselves while highlighting them. And I think this is what
all gets by accident. All by accident. Just being who we are and having a good time.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Right in the peaks and the valleys of it.
Yes, sir. Oh,
So a few months ago, a complete anon in the Flare community just like snuck up in the X spaces and told Hugo that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And then that was the only thing that they quoted from that whole conversation, like directly from Flare and everything. So I love it. And do you want to share some more about like where that quote comes from and how you understand it?
Yeah, I so love this quote. It's by a gentleman named Peter Block. Peter Block's like a management consultant, community building guru from 70s, 80s, and 90s. He's wrote some awesome books. But this concept that culture eats strategy for breakfast is kind of essentially saying that, the best minds and the linear thinkers are saying, okay, if we do A and then B, we're going to end up with C. But time and time again, we see that is not the way that things roll out, that there's some X factor that comes to play. And that X factor is culture. And what is culture? Culture is some like amorphous, unstated in many cases, set of norms, agreements, habits, practices, protocols that the group of people adhere to. And so it feels really important to continue to say that quote and to put it out there, especially in spaces that tend to be more linearly oriented, spaces that rely on math and science to get to advance their work. Just to remind us all that there's this X factor at play, and that we can't get too married to our strategies, because the law of unintended consequences is going to show up, and there's going to be some human element that we call culture in this case that interprets this tool, this system that's totally linear, and goes and uses it for something that was completely unexpected. There's some great memes around this that show like pathways at parks. And there's these nice pathways that are all structured. And if you look at it from above, they make a star or an XYZ. But how users actually go about using these pathways is not as the engineers intended. You see all like the cut throughs, the graphs and stuff. And I think as designers of financial tools and these cryptocurrencies and different systems, we don't do the best job of accounting for how culture ends up using the tools that the awesome folks at Flare and these other protocols are building for us.
man, I tell you what, I've watched hours and hours, obviously doing due diligence and studying Flair and Hugo and everything else, just to make sure, to know what I'm getting involved in and making sure that, I keep looking for what's around the corner, what's the problem. But the one funny thing is that comment or that quote was probably the first time I've ever seen somebody make Hugo stop and really reflect on something for a moment. Like, because the dude is super smart. And that one there kind of really got him. And it was just that's why I got quoted, because people who know Hugo, right, and have watched all his stuff, like that one kind of got him a little bit, which was impressive to see, because it's hard to impress somebody as smart as Hugo, and he was overly impressed. Whether it showed or not, like if you know him, you saw it.
I didn't mean to put him on the hot seat or do a gotcha. I'm so much more.
I don't think it was either of those. I think he enjoyed it. I think he loved it, and it fits Flair to a T, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm just so interested in the human side of these tools and how they're going to get applied. And, much of my visibility is into organizations and the internal life of them. And I love just kind of getting a beat on how these decentralized organizations are operating and how they're able to sustain. So some of the like organizational culture stuff kind of interests me more than the technical stuff, because I don't understand the protocols or the tokenomics. I get people a lot more than systems.
For sure. I think that that's where the teamwork happens. Some people are good at something, some people are But at completely different things that are both necessary. So yeah, part of what we want to do with this channel is not only have the technical, but also have the human side, but also like the mindset aspect of how many things like are so much more in the mind than the actual circumstances outside. So you went recently to El Salvador. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, a friend has a foundation and they needed some organization team development support. So I flew down to El Salvador to give them a hand. This organization is called Murfs Life. They do amazing work and they're tangentially connected to the Bitcoin community down in El Salvador. Murfs Life Foundation is getting funds and helping to alleviate generational poverty by supporting folks who are impoverished in El Salvador start up businesses and have the resources to then run those businesses so they can provide for themselves and their family, doing super important work and doing it in a way that is fun. They've got amazing content out there. So like them on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. I think they've got a good page there as well. It was fascinating. While we were down in El Salvador, we had the chance to meet a lot of folks in the crypto community in El Salvador, and they got something special going on down there. I think so many of us are attracted to the space because of the values proposition, not the value proposition, but like sovereignty, autonomy, freedom, decentralizing power, disintermediating middlemen. And so, because of the different policies that President Bukele has forwarded, he's made it like a hub of people who want to further these values through the different ways that they know and care. So while we were down there, was able to meet folks who are doing Bitcoin education and creating curriculum for the public schools in El Salvador. Pretty awesome stuff. Able to meet up with folks who are, fourth generation coffee cultivators and producers who are now integrating Bitcoin and blockchains into how they're going about the cultivation, the distribution, and the sale of their coffee beans. Able to meet up with these folks who created the Bitcoin farmers market in El Zonte. So a farmers market that only accepts Bitcoin. And so there you've got all sorts of wonderful, creative crypto folks who are, they're passionate about crypto, but they're also passionate about raw milk or crystals or tobacco. And they're selling their wares in crypto. What I love about all these different folks that we were able to meet is, Bitcoin might have brought them to El Salvador, but the thing that's keeping them there is the community that's coalescing around these tools and around these sets of values. So it's really inspiring to see that on the ground, to see it, in a tangible sense, and kind of get off the cantankerous and the at each other's throats crypto sphere that sometimes we see on X, on Twitter, and just to see normal people living their day-to-day lives using these tools and how they are together in community, given the shared values that they have, not just interest in these financial protocols.
For sure. I think that crypto is the means to be able to do other things. Like that's how I see it. Not the end goal. And that's exactly what I see. So that's amazing. Yeah, I've been following Murf Life since you told me about them, and I really appreciate what they're doing. I think it's pretty cool. Uh, I'm out of questions, but I have one last question for you. So here at Flare, we've been asking because the idea of Flare is that it's going to be able to connect other networks. And without going into the technicals, I know that you started with Bitcoin and then you went into Ethereum. And when you started, I'm sure the user interface was very different than what is now. So I know you've used Flare a little bit. So how has that changed your mind about like other networks and potentially what would need to happen for you to be like, okay, this looks good enough for me to bring some of my Bitcoin into the Flare networks?
Ooh. So throughout the years, I've DeFi'd in different platforms, and then after some mishaps and God 2020, I stopped doing DeFi. It wasn't until late 2024 where I got back in, and I'm only doing DeFi on the Flare network because of the ease of their tools, and it's safe. I've done enough research to feel that the way that Flare has structured the smart contracts, and the different tools, protocols that are being developed on the Flare network, they're safe. I like how communicative they are. I remember there was a scare a few months ago on the Kinetic network, the way that organization responded to it. Makes me feel like I can continue to stake and lend there without any fear. And I think it's only a matter of kind of time before I'm ready to send some Bitcoin over to the network and put it on the F assets.
Yes, F assets. Yeah.
So that is coming soon. The last 2 months have been a bit crazy for me, so I haven't had my mind in my finances much. But when summer comes, there's going to be a bit more space, and I definitely plan on staking and using more of the amazing tools that are being built out on the Flare network.
Awesome.